My grandma destroyed my childhood by convincing my mom the world was too dangerous for me. When I finally begged her to let us live normally, she laughed and said, "We don't want you to end up an orphan, do we?" I stayed silent. That was 10 years ago. Today, she stood in court, her walker abandoned on the floor. Up until I was 12 years old, life was literally sunshine and rainbows. My mom and dad loved each other, and they loved me even more. We never struggled financially, and things were pretty great TBH. But one day, my dad went out for the milk and never came back. You see, right beside our neighborhood was one known for gang violence and crime. So my dad was on a walk one day when he was caught in a drive-by shooting. I still remember the way his lifeless body lay motionless on the sidewalk, his limbs twisted at unnatural angles, as my neighbors rushed over in shock. Things were never the same after that. My mom homeschooled me because she was scared of letting me go outside. She had my dad's mom, her mother-in-law, do all the grocery shopping because she swore that at any second she could be shot dead. It wasn't until a year had passed that she finally let me go to school again, and soon I became her parent. She expected me to do anything that involved going outside because she couldn't suffer another death of who she loves most in the world. During parent-teacher conferences, I had to go alone and get all the teachers to FaceTime her. For any banking errands, I, as a teenager, had to go and deposit checks or argue with bank staff over account discrepancies. I thought I was doing what my dad would have wanted, not realizing that the entire time I was enabling her to avoid healing. Anytime I came home, I had to put my shoes into a zip-locked bag and scrub my hands until my skin was practically burning. And one evening when my grandma, my mom's mother-in-law, stayed over, I broke down. I sneaked into her room and cried my eyes out, told her how lonely I felt, how I just wanted my childhood back. She held me for a while in silence, and when I finally stopped crying, she spoke. I expected her to tell me that she'd speak to my mom for me, or at least start carrying some of the workload. But no. "Honey, I spoke to your mom already. I was the one who told her not to go outside, because we don't want you to end up as an orphan now, do we?" Her voice was dripping with condescension. I stared straight into her eyes, looking for any sign that she was joking, but she wasn't. I walked out and let my thoughts spiral, and after just 10 minutes, I came to the conclusion that I was being ungrateful, and I needed to stop dragging down the family. So even when I learned to drive for the first time, my mom just watched from the living room window, and when I won Athlete of the Year in junior year, she never showed up. It hurt, but I told myself I was used to it. So when my high school graduation date was finalized, I don't even know why I called her. Maybe because I wanted to feel like a normal teenager, or maybe because a small part of me still had a little bit of hope that she would pull through for my big day, for me. But as soon as I said it, there was silence on the other line. She said out loud, thinking of a new excuse to give without admitting she was wasting her life away living in fear. "I think I have a meeting that day, sorry honey." "No problem, Mom." I kept my voice cheery, trying to hide the tears in my eyes. "But hey, when you're back we can order some Baskin-Robbins ice cream, just like when you were little." "Yeah, Mom," I responded, "just like when I was little." As soon as I hung up, I ran to the bathroom, put down the toilet seat, and curled up into a ball. I could feel my heart breaking in my chest. As usual, I hated myself for being sad and immediately wiped my tears away. My granny told me she wasn't coming because she had to look after my mom. Like, hello? She's literally a grown-on woman. Anyway, the day was fine, I guess. My last name starts with a Z, and the entire time I was waiting to be called out, I wish I never came, because no one was there to be proud of me, to tell me I had done a good job. As I got on stage, I looked around and saw all my friends' families, ones that hadn't been corrupted by sudden death. But that's when I noticed something. In the corner of my eye, someone waving straight at me. I turned and saw my mother, standing outside for the first time since my dad died. I couldn't help but squeal and start tearing up. This was the same woman who once had a panic attack because I wore outside shoes in the house. The same woman who made me fail a test after she had a bad dream that I died, and forced me to stay indoors for the entire week. And once the ceremony was over, we really did get Baskin-Robbins. And it really was like old times. The next morning, my mom woke up and shook me awake. "Someone's out to get us." Her voice was filled with terror. Well, I was used to her paranoid night terrors, so I tried to bring her back to bed, but that's when she showed me a note. On it was a very sloppily written, "I will kidnap your daughter if you go outside again." I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my mother-in-law, very clearly trying to scare my mom away from going outside again. And it was working, because my mom had triple locked all the doors and bolted down the windows. That's when I finally realized it. My life wasn't bad because of my incompetence, or my mom's for that matter. It was all because of my mother-in-law, and she had gotten away with it. Almost. I'd been documenting everything, keeping copies of the threatening notes, recording conversations when I could. My grandma had hired a private investigator a month ago to track my movements, but he was sloppy. Always at the same diner, same routine. I'd been building my case carefully, waiting for the right moment. I stormed out of my mom's room and marched straight to the guest bedroom. My grandma was sitting there reading a magazine like nothing happened. I slammed the door behind me and held up the note. She barely glanced at it before going back to her magazine. I snatched the magazine out of her hands and threw it across the room. She finally looked at me with this fake, innocent expression. I told her I knew she wrote it. She just shrugged and said she was protecting the family. I asked her what gave her the right to control our lives. She stood up and got right in my face, telling me I was being dramatic. I pushed past her and went to pack a bag. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. My mom was banging on my door asking what was wrong. I ignored her and kept shoving clothes into my backpack. I had some money saved from doing odd jobs for neighbors. It wasn't much, but it would get me a motel room for a few nights. I climbed out my window and started walking. My phone kept buzzing with calls from both of them. I turned it off and kept going. The motel I found was sketchy but cheap. I paid for 3 nights and crashed on the lumpy bed. I spent the next day applying for jobs at every place within walking distance. A diner down the street hired me on the spot. The manager, Kyle, said I could start the next day. I worked double shifts to save up faster. After 2 weeks, I had enough for a deposit on a tiny studio apartment. It was basically a closet with a bathroom bathroom, but it was mine. My mom kept calling the diner looking for me. Kyle told her I didn't work there anymore. He was a real one for that. I changed my phone number and tried to move on with my life, but of course my grandma couldn't let that happen. She started showing up at my apartment building. The first time she knocked on my door, I pretended I wasn't home. She stood there for an hour before leaving. The next day, she was back with my mom. They sat in the hallway crying and begging me to come out. My neighbor Marie threatened to call the cops on them. They finally left but came back the next morning. This went on for weeks. I started leaving for work at 5 a.m. just to avoid them. One morning, I found my car tires slashed. I knew it was my grandma trying to trap me there. I called in sick and spent the day looking for a new place. I found a room for rent across town and moved that night. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even Kyle. I got a job at a grocery store and kept my head down. Things were quiet for about a month. Then one day, my new roommate Melissa said someone had been asking about me, an older woman claiming to be my grandmother. I begged Melissa not to tell her anything. She agreed, but said the woman seemed really persistent. I started looking for another place immediately. Before I could move again, my grandma found me at work. She cornered me in the parking lot after my shift. She said my mom was getting worse without me, that she needed professional help but refused to leave the house. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. She grabbed my arm when I tried to walk away. Her nails dug into my skin. She said I was being selfish and destroying the family. I yanked my arm free and ran to my car. She followed me screaming about how ungrateful I was, how my dad would be ashamed of me. That hit hard, but I kept driving. I went straight to the police station and filed a report. The officer said without proof of threats or violence, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested getting a restraining order, but that would require going to court, and court meant they'd have my new address on file. I couldn't risk it. I decided to leave town completely. I had enough saved for a bus ticket and first month's rent somewhere new. I picked a city 3 states away and left that night. I didn't tell my roommate or my boss, just disappeared. The bus ride took 18 hours. I slept most of the way and tried not to think about what I was leaving behind. The new city was bigger and busier, perfect for disappearing. I found a job at a warehouse and a room in a shared house. My housemates were all college kids who kept to themselves. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I even started taking night classes at the community college. My life was finally getting back on track. Then 6 months later, I got a Facebook message from an account with no profile picture. It was my grandma. She'd found me again. The message said she knew where I lived and where I worked. She said running away wouldn't solve anything. The words glowed on my phone screen at 2 a.m., making my hands shake so badly I nearly dropped it. I blocked the account immediately, but more messages came from different accounts, all saying the same thing, that my mom was dying without me, that I was culling her slowly. Each notification felt like a punch to the gut. I changed all my social media settings to private and used fake names, created elaborate backstories for my profiles. Sarah the dog walker, Jessica the barista, anyone but me. But somehow she kept finding ways to contact me. I started getting paranoid at work, jumping every time the warehouse door opened. Every time I saw an older woman, I'd freeze up, my heart racing until I confirmed it wasn't her. My supervisor Patrick noticed and asked if I was okay. I just said I was tired, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. One day I came home to find a package on my doorstep. No return address, just my name written in that familiar spidery handwriting that made my blood run cold. Inside was a photo album full of pictures from when I was little, me and my parents at the beach, my dad's strong arms holding me above the waves, my dad pushing me on a swing, his laugh frozen in time. All these memories I'd tried to forget came flooding back. There was a note that said my mom wanted me to have these, that she missed me every day, that she hadn't left her room in weeks. I threw the whole thing in the trash and cried for hours, ugly sobs that left me gasping for air. My housemate Sean found me on the kitchen floor and helped me to my room. He didn't ask questions, which I appreciated, just brought me water and sat with me until I stopped shaking. The packages kept coming like clockwork. Sometimes it was old toys or clothes from my childhood, my favorite stuffed elephant, the dress I wore to my 6th birthday party. Sometimes it was guilt trip letters about how I was breaking my mother's heart, each word carefully chosen to twist the knife deeper. Photos of her looking gaunt and hollow-eyed. I stopped checking the mail altogether, let it pile up until the landlord complained, threatening eviction if I didn't clear the overflow. I knew I should move again, but I was so tired of running. My bones ached with exhaustion. Plus, I'd just gotten promoted to shift supervisor at work, and my community college classes were going well. I didn't want to start over again, didn't want to lose the fragile stability I'd built. Then my grandma escalated her tactics. She started calling my work pretending to be different people, her voice shifting like a chameleon. Once she said she was from my insurance company, claiming there was an urgent issue with my coverage. Another time she claimed to be a doctor, saying I'd left important medication at their office. Her performances were convincing, Oscar-worthy even. My boss got suspicious and pulled me aside. His office smelled like stale coffee and disappointment. I had to make up some story about a stalker ex-boyfriend. He said he understood, but I could tell he thought I was trouble. The way he looked at me had changed. I invested in security cameras for my room and changed my daily routine constantly. Became an expert in unpredictability. Never took the same route to work twice. Started shopping at different grocery stores each week, memorizing their layouts in case I needed to run. It was exhausting, but it kept her guessing, for a while anyway. Then one morning I woke up to find my car windshield smashed, spider web cracks spreading across the glass like frozen lightning. Nothing was stolen, but there was a note under the wiper. It said I couldn't hide forever. That family was everything. That blood was thicker than water. I called the cops, but without proof it was her, they couldn't do anything. The officer looked bored, like this was just another hysterical woman wasting his time. I started carrying pepper spray and took self-defense classes at the Y. The instructor, a tough woman named Judy with arms like steel cables, said I seemed really tense and offered to grab coffee after class. I almost said yes, desperate for normal human connection, but then remembered I couldn't trust anyone. What if my grandma had sent her? I know that sounds crazy, but I was losing it by that point. Paranoia had become my constant companion. I stopped going to classes and just watched YouTube videos in my room instead, practicing moves on my shadow. My grades started slipping because I was too stressed to focus. The words in my textbooks blurred together, meaningless symbols. I'd sit in the library trying to study but kept looking over my shoulder. Every sound made me jump, a book dropping, a chair scraping, someone coughing. I failed my midterm spectacularly, and my professor asked if everything was all right at home. I laughed at the irony, a harsh sound that made her step back. Nothing had been all right at home for years. I dropped out of school and picked up extra shifts at work. At least there I was surrounded by people and security cameras, safety in numbers and surveillance. But my grandma found a way around that too. She started showing up at the warehouse pretending to be a customer, wearing different disguises like some demented spy. The first time security escorted her out immediately, but she came back with different wigs and clothes, sometimes a red bob and sundress, sometimes gray curls and a pantsuit. Sometimes she'd just stand across the street watching the building, a sentinel of guilt. I started having panic attacks in the bathroom, hyperventilating into paper towels to muffle the sound. My coworker Sophia found me hyperventilating one day and drove me to urgent care. The doctor prescribed anxiety medication, but I was too paranoid to take it. What if it made me less alert? What if that's what she wanted? I knew I was spiraling but didn't know how to stop. The descent felt inevitable, like gravity. I wasn't eating or sleeping properly. Lost 20 pounds in 2 months, my clothes hanging off me like scarecrow rags. My roommates started avoiding me because I was always jumpy and suspicious, interrogating them about every visitor, every phone call. I installed extra locks on my bedroom door and slept with a baseball bat next to my bed. Started keeping a go bag packed in case I needed to run again. Cash, clothes, granola bars, a burner phone. This wasn't living anymore. It was just surviving, existing in the spaces between fear. Then my mom started calling my work too. Her voice was weak and shaky, like a ghost of who she used to be. She'd leave voicemails saying she just wanted to hear my voice, that she was sorry for everything, that she loved me and missed me, that she couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe without me. I had to change my work extension 3 times. HR started asking questions about all the personal calls, their concerns shifting to annoyance. I could feel my job slipping away just like everything else. My grandma was systematically destroying every part of my new life, dismantling it piece by piece like a cruel architect. I decided to fight back, started documenting everything obsessively. Every call, every package, every sighting, timestamps, dates, descriptions. I bought a cheap camera and recorded her following me, capturing her various disguises. Built up a file of evidence thick as a phone book. Found a lawyer who worked on sliding scale fees. She said I had a good case for a restraining order, but warned me it would mean facing them in court, seeing them again, being in the same room. I said I was ready. I wasn't, but I couldn't keep running forever. My feet were too tired, my soul too worn. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. I used that time to prepare like a soldier going to war, organized all my evidence and practiced what I would say in the mirror until my reflection felt like a stranger. The lawyer, Stephanie, coached me on staying calm and sticking to facts. She said judges had seen it all and would recognize manipulation when they saw it. I wanted to believe her, but I was terrified. What if my grandma convinced everyone I was the bad guy? She was good at playing the sweet old lady card, had perfected it over decades. I didn't tell anyone about the court date, not my roommates or coworkers. Couldn't risk it getting back to her somehow through the invisible network of gossip and social media. The night before, I couldn't sleep at all, just laid there running through worst-case scenarios like a horror movie marathon. What if the judge sided with them? What if they forced me to go back? What if my mom showed up and had a breakdown in court? By morning, I'd worked myself into such a state I threw up twice, dry heaving when nothing was left. But I went anyway. Showed up an hour early and sat in my car psyching myself up, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. When I finally went inside, my legs were shaking so bad I could barely walk. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room really. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, beige walls closing in. My lawyer was already there setting up her papers. She squeezed my shoulder and told me I was doing the right thing. I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. Then they walked in. My grandma looked older and frailer than I remembered. She was leaning on a cane I'd never seen before, moving with exaggerated difficulty, playing up the helpless grandmother act already. Behind her was my mom. She looked terrible, hair unwashed and stringy, clothes hanging off her skinny frame like she'd shrunk inside them, dark circles under her eyes so deep they looked like bruises. Part of me wanted to run to her, to hold her and make it all better. The other part wanted to run away, to never stop running. I did neither, just sat there frozen, a statue of indecision. My grandma made a big show of struggling to sit down, sighing dramatically and wincing like she was in pain, each movement calculated for maximum sympathy. My mom just stared at me with these big sad eyes, tears already pooling. I looked away and focused on my lawyer's papers, the neat typed words anchoring me to reality. The judge came in and things got started. My lawyer presented our case first. All the harassment and stalking laid out in clinical detail, the fake calls to my work, the vandalism. She laid it out clearly and professionally, each piece of evidence a building block in our wall of truth. Then it was their turn. My grandma's lawyer painted me as an ungrateful child who abandoned her grieving mother, said my grandma was just a concerned grandmother trying to reunite her family, that all her actions came from a place of love. He actually used the word love like that excused everything, like love was a free pass for stalking and harassment. I wanted to scream, but Stephanie had warned me to stay quiet unless asked to speak. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The judge asked my grandma directly about the threatening note, the one about kidnapping me. She put on this confused act, her face a mask of bewilderment, said she would never write such a thing, that someone must be trying to frame her, even suggested maybe I wrote it myself for attention. attention. The lie came so easily to her, smooth as silk. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles went white. The judge asked if she had contacted my work. She admitted to calling once or twice out of concern, said she was worried I might be in danger, living alone in a strange city with no family to protect me. The implication clear. I needed them. Then the judge turned to my mom, asked her about her relationship with me. My mom started crying immediately, ugly sobbing that shook her whole body like an earthquake. She said I was her whole world, that she didn't understand why I left, that she just wanted her baby back. The words came out in gasps between sobs. The judge had to call a recess because she was getting hysterical. My grandma shot me this look like, see what you did. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and cease existing. When we came back, my mom had calmed down some. Her face was blotchy and swollen, but the tears had stopped. The judge asked her about not leaving the house. She said it was hard after losing my dad, but she was getting better, that she'd even started seeing a therapist. My grandma nodded along supportively, playing the caring mother. I knew it was all lies, but had no way to prove it. The judge asked if she encouraged my grandma to contact me. She said no, that she told her to give me space. Another lie, but she said it so convincingly I almost believed it myself. Then it was my turn to speak. The judge asked me to explain why I felt a restraining order was necessary. I told him everything. How my grandma manipulated my mom's grief, feeding it like a poisonous plant. How she wrote that note to keep her scared and dependent. How she'd systematically stalked and harassed me across state lines. How I just wanted to live my life in peace. My voice shook, but I got through it. My grandma kept shaking her head like I was making it all up. My mom just cried quietly, each tear a dagger. The judge asked if I had any proof my grandma wrote the note. I admitted I didn't beyond recognizing her handwriting. He asked why I didn't report the harassment earlier. I explained about being afraid they'd find me, about starting over so many times. He seemed skeptical, asked if maybe this was all a misunderstanding. If perhaps my grandma's actions, while misguided, came from genuine concern. I said concern didn't involve slashing tires and stalking someone at work. He frowned and made notes, his pen scratching ominously. In the end, he granted a temporary restraining order, just 6 months. Said it would give everyone time to cool down and maybe seek family counseling. I wanted to laugh at that suggestion, like therapy could fix years of manipulation and control, like talking would somehow erase the fear etched into my bones. But at least it was something. My grandma had to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, and my work. No contact through third parties either. If she violated it, she'd face criminal charges. As we left the courtroom, my mom tried to approach me. The bailiff stopped her and reminded her about the order. She looked so confused and hurt, like she didn't understand why I was doing this to her, to them, like I was the villain in this story. My grandma just glared at me with pure hatred, all her sweet grandma act gone, the mask finally slipping. I saw her true face finally. Stephanie walked me to my car and said I'd done great, that this was just the first step in taking back my life. But I didn't feel victorious, just empty and tired, hollowed out like a gourd. I drove home and crawled into bed fully clothed, slept for 14 hours straight, dreamless and heavy. When I woke up, I had dozens of missed calls, not from them, but from other family members, aunts and uncles I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins who barely knew me, all saying I was tearing the family apart, that I needed to forgive and come home, that family was everything. I blocked every single number methodically. Family meant nothing if this was how they acted. I thought the restraining order would fix things, that I could finally relax and live normally, but the damage was already done, the foundation already cracked. My work had put me on probation because of all the disruptions. My roommates asked me to move out, said they didn't feel safe with all the drama. I couldn't blame them really. I found a studio apartment on the wrong side of town and threw myself into work, kept my head down and tried to rebuild. Again, always again. For a few months things were quiet. No packages or calls or surprise visits. The silence felt strange, like the calm before a storm. I started to breathe easier, even signed up for classes again, tentatively stepping back into life. Made a friend in my statistics course named Michael. We studied together sometimes. Nothing romantic, just nice to have normal human interaction. I was starting to feel like myself again. Should have known it wouldn't last. The restraining order was set to expire in a week when everything went wrong. I was walking home from the library when I noticed someone following me. Not my grandma, but a woman I didn't recognize. Young, maybe 30s, professional looking in a blazer and slacks. I ducked into a coffee shop and she followed, sat at a nearby table pretending to read, but her eyes kept flicking to me. I called Michael and asked him to come get me, told him I felt sick. He showed up in 10 minutes, bless him. As we left, I saw the woman get on her phone. My stomach dropped like a stone. The next day, there was a knock at my door, sharp and official sounding. I checked the peephole and saw a man in a suit. He said he was a social worker, that there had been concerns about my mental health. I didn't open the door, just yelled at him to leave. He slid some papers under the door and left. They were forms for a psychiatric evaluation. Said family members had reported I was showing signs of paranoid delusions, that I might be a danger to myself. The words blurred as my hands shook. I called Stephanie immediately. She said this was a common tactic. Try to discredit me before the restraining order hearing. Make me look unstable so the judge wouldn't renew it. She said to document everything and not engage with anyone. But it was hard when they kept escalating. The social worker came back twice more. Then someone called my landlord saying I was running a substance operation. He didn't believe it but said he couldn't deal with the drama. Gave me 30 days to move out. Another home lost. I was running out of money and options. Couldn't keep moving every few months. Couldn't afford to keep missing work for court dates and apartment hunting. My savings were nearly gone. I considered giving up, just going back and pretending everything was fine. Let them win. But then I thought about my dad, how he died just walking down the street, how unfair and random it was. He didn't get a choice in leaving us, but I did, and I chose to live. The restraining order renewal hearing was brutal. My grandma's lawyer brought up the social worker visits, suggested I was paranoid and delusional, that I didn't invented this harassment campaign, that my poor grandmother was just worried about my mental state. They even had affidavits from family members I'd blocked, all saying I'd always been troubled, that I'd made up stories as a child. Complete lies, but it looked official on paper. Stephanie fought back hard, pointed out the timing of everything. How convenient that mental health concerns only arose right before the hearing. She presented phone records showing the hundreds of calls to my work, security footage of my grandma at the warehouse. The judge seemed more receptive this time, maybe because my mom wasn't there crying, just my grandma and her fake concern. In the end, he renewed the order for a full year. Also added a provision that any third-party contact would be considered a violation. That meant no more family members calling or showing up, no more social workers or mysterious followers. If my grandma orchestrated anything, she'd go to jail. She looked furious but stayed quiet. Her lawyer whispered something about appeals, but the judge shut that down quick. I thought that would be the end. A year of peace to get my life together. Maybe after that, they'd give up and move on. I was naive. 2 weeks later, my mom died. Heart attack in her sleep, the obituary said, but I knew better. She'd worried herself to death. Let fear eat away at her until her heart just gave up. And my grandma made sure I knew about it. Not directly, of course. But suddenly her obituary was everywhere I looked. Taped to my car, slipped under my door, posted on every social media platform. I didn't go to the funeral, couldn't risk it, and honestly didn't want to. That sounds cold, but she'd been dead to me since the day she chose fear over her own daughter. The real betrayal came later, when I found out she'd left everything to my grandma. The house, the life insurance, all of it. And my grandma used that money to make my life hell. Hired a private investigator to follow me. Not close enough to violate the order, but always there. Watching. Waiting. I knew I had to do something drastic. The PI was getting bolder, parking right outside my work in his hit-up silver sedan. I started taking pictures of him every time I saw him. License plates, timestamps, everything. Stephanie said it was good evidence, but we needed more to prove my grandma hired him. I decided to flip the script. Started following the PI instead. Sounds crazy, but I was desperate. Turns out he was sloppy. Always went to the same diner for lunch, ordering the same turkey club sandwich. Same gas station every morning at 7:15 sharp. I watched him for a week, learning his routine. Then I saw my chance. He left his car unlocked while paying for gas. I slipped in and grabbed his work folder from the passenger seat. Inside were photos of me, notes about my schedule, and best of all, a contract with my grandma's signature. Bingo. I made copies of everything and put the folder back. Didn't want him knowing I was onto him yet. Stephanie was thrilled when I showed her the evidence. Said this was enough to get criminal charges filed. We went to the police that afternoon. The detective actually took me seriously this time. Probably helped that I had a lawyer with me. They arrested my grandma 2 days later. The PI folded immediately when they questioned him. Told them everything about how she hired him, what she wanted him to do. She'd even talked about kidnapping me once the restraining order expired. He'd recorded some of their conversations to cover his own butt. Smart guy. Terrible at his job though. The trial was set for 6 months out. My grandma got out on bail but had to wear an ankle monitor. Couldn't leave her house except for court dates and doctor appointments. I finally felt like I could breathe. Got a new job at a bookstore since the warehouse had let me go. The owner, Jesse, was this chill older guy who didn't ask questions about my past. I even started dating Michael from my stats class. Told him the whole story on our 3rd date. Expected him to run, but he just held my hand and said his family was crazy too. We took things slow, but it was nice having someone on my side. Someone who didn't think I was overreacting or being dramatic. My grandma tried one last manipulation. Had her lawyer contact me about a plea deal. If I dropped the charges, she'd leave me alone forever. Would even sign something saying she'd never contact me again. Stephanie advised against it. Said she'd already violated one court order. What would stop her from violating another? Plus, the criminal charges would send a real message. The trial was nothing like TV. No dramatic speeches or surprise witnesses. Just a lot of paperwork and procedure. My grandma played up the frail old lady thing again. Even showed up with a walker she definitely didn't need. But the evidence was too strong. The PI's testimony sealed it. He told the jury how she'd stalked me for years. How she'd bragged about controlling my mom through fear. She took the stand in her own defense. Tried to spin it as protecting family. Said I was ungrateful and selfish. That she'd raised me after my dad died and this was how I repaid her. The prosecutor shut that down quick. Asked her about the threatening note. About slashing my tires. She denied everything but the jury didn't buy it. They found her guilty on all counts. Stalking, harassment, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The judge gave her 2 years in prison and 5 years probation after. She had to pay restitution for all the money I'd spent moving and the therapy I'd need. When they read the verdict, she finally dropped the act. Screamed that I'd ruined everything. That I'd called my mother. The bailiffs had to drag her out. I thought I'd feel victorious, but mostly I just felt sad. This whole thing started because my dad died. One random act of violence that spiraled into years of manipulation and control. My mom never got help because my grandma kept her afraid. And now they were both gone in different ways. After the trial, I went to my mom's grave for the first time. Brought white roses, her favorite flowers, and sat there for a while. Told her I was sorry things ended this way. That I wished she'd been stronger. That I loved her despite everything. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like closure. Michael came with me. He waited in the car while I had my moment. Later we went for ice cream and talked about normal things. Movies and homework and weekend plans. It felt surreal after everything. Like I was learning how to be a regular person again. My grandma tried to contact me from prison once. Sent a letter through another inmate's family. I didn't read it, just gave it straight to Stephanie. She handled it and my grandma got extra time for violating the no contact order. After that, the letters stopped. The calls stopped. Everything stopped. I graduated college a year later. Michael and I moved in together. Got a cat named Corey who liked to knock plants off the windowsill. Normal life stuff that felt extraordinary to me. I still had bad days. Still looked over my shoulder sometimes. But therapy helped. Having Michael helped. Time helped. I got a job at a publishing company. Nothing fancy, just assistant editor, but I loved it. Spent my days reading manuscripts and drinking too much coffee. My coworkers became friends. We'd go for drinks after work and complain about authors who couldn't meet deadlines. Normal complaints that had nothing to do with stalking or restraining orders. 5 years passed. I heard through the grapevine that my grandma got out of prison, moved to Florida to live with her sister. Part of her probation was staying out of my state. I changed my name legally just to be safe. Not my first name, but my last. Took Michael's when we got married in a small ceremony. Just us and some friends at the courthouse. Sometimes I wondered what life would have been like if my dad hadn't died. If my mom had gotten proper help instead of being controlled. If my grandma had actually been the loving grandmother she pretended to be. But dwelling on what ifs didn't change anything. I had to focus on what was. What was turned out to be pretty good. We bought a little house with a big backyard. Adopted another cat named Gray, who bullied Corey constantly. I got promoted to senior editor. Michael started teaching at the local community college. We talked about kids but weren't ready yet. Maybe someday. I still have the photos from that album my grandma sent. The ones of me and my dad. I framed a few and hung them in the hallway. He looked so happy in them. So alive. I like to think he'd be proud of me for getting out. For building my own life. For not letting fear control me like it did my mom. The restraining order expired years ago, but I never heard from my grandma again. Maybe prison changed her. Maybe she just got tired. Maybe she found a new target. I didn't know and didn't care. She was part of my past now. A painful chapter in a story that kept going. Last month, I ran into my old coworker Sophia from the warehouse. She recognized me despite the years and the name change. We grabbed coffee and caught up. She said she always wondered what happened to me. I gave her the abbreviated version. She whistled and said I was brave. I didn't feel brave, just stubborn. But maybe that's enough sometimes. Being too stubborn to let someone else control your life. Too stubborn to give up when everything seems hopeless. Too stubborn to let fear win. My mom never learned that lesson. She let my grandma's manipulation turn her into a prisoner in her own home. I refuse to follow that path. These days, I barely think about it. Whole weeks go by where I don't remember the court dates or the stalking or the fear. I'm too busy living, working and cooking dinner and arguing with Michael about what color to paint the bathroom. The kind of problems I dreamed about having when I was sleeping in sketchy motels and looking over my shoulder. Sometimes new coworkers ask about my family. I just say they're not in my life and change the subject. Most people don't push. Everyone's got their own drama. Mine just happened to involve restraining orders and a grandmother who thought love meant control. But that's over now. Has been for years. I'm writing this because I saw a post the other day. Some kid asking for advice about their controlling family. It brought everything back, but not in a bad way. More like remembering an old injury that's fully healed. You know it happened, but it doesn't hurt anymore. Just leaves a scar to remind you that you survived. So yeah, that's my story. My dad died when I was 12, and it set off a chain reaction that took years to escape. But I did escape. Built a whole new life from scratch. And the best part? It's boring. Beautifully, wonderfully boring. No drama, no manipulation. Just me and Michael and our cats living a normal life. Exactly what I always wanted. Oh, and if you're wondering what happened to that full story link I mentioned at the beginning, there isn't one. Just wanted to see if my grandma was still cyber stalking me. Hey grandma, if you're reading this, I won. And I hope those Florida mosquitoes are eating you alive. Peace out.